All right, so welcome everyone. Very happy to have you here tonight. You are at Welcome to the Jungle, and recently we launched a new media called Behind the Code, which is meant to be a platform created by developer for developer to tackle topics around programming. So you can find articles, videos, and events like the one we are doing today. Really what we are looking after is the behind the scenes of programming, the people involved into the programming world, try to understand their insights, and today is really the physical representation of that. There are two kinds of meetups organized by Behind the Code. The first one is about your career as a CTO or our technical leader. We did the first one a couple of weeks ago. And the second kind of event is the one we are doing tonight. It's called CODER Stories. It's about interviewing someone, a tech personality, and trying to understand his insights. So for our very first CODER Stories event, we are very glad to welcome Gaël Duval tonight with us.
Hi.
So Gaël, you are one of the pioneers of Linux on the desktop. In '98, you created the Linux distribution Linux Mandrake, which was actually the first one I installed myself back in high school. I think I found the CD in a magazine or something. And actually, for many of us, it was the first time we got introduced to Linux, thanks to you. So, congrats for that.
Pleasure.
But you didn't even stop there. So you went on to create a virtual desktop platform called Ulteo, which was a startup. And then in 2017, you created the mobile operating system, which is a privacy-focused fork of Android. So during the next 45 minutes, we'll get to all of that. We'll ask a few questions to Gaël, and at the end, you'll be able to ask questions yourself, of course. And we'll finish with a small meal in the next room. So, Gaël, thanks again for being here.
Thanks to you thanks for inviting me.
You're welcome. So tell us a bit more about your background. You know, where did you come from? What did you study?
Yes, at the very beginning of the story of Mandrake Linux, I was still a student. Actually, I was finishing my studies in computing sciences at the university, and well, this is the time I discovered Unix, because before Unix, I used the operating systems you can find on your home PC, and at the time it was mostly MS-DOS and Windows, the first version of Windows 3 and 95, and it was quite a nightmare. I mean, on a developer software.
Right. So what did you like the most about Unix?
Unix has really been a big shock for me, because it was a new open world. Actually, it was multitasking operating system, multi-users, and even in the mid-90s, it was already connected to the internet at this time. So all the time. So it was really a new world, so exciting.
And so, did you start with a Unix or with the Linux distribution?
I started using Unix first,
okay.
On Sun Microsystems Spark stations, and eventually, I don't remember exactly, I discovered Linux on forums or FTPs, not on the web at the time, because it was very small.
You were just browsing FTPs randomly, and you found
Yes, I found the GNU operating systems and Linux and everything. And I was curious about this, and I understood that it was maybe possible to install this on your own PC at home, on x86 hardware. And I said, wow, is it true? So I purchased 50 floppy disks at the time, and I downloaded all the stuff at the uni, and I put everything on on the disk, and I put this at home, and I pushed all the disks in my own PC. And
all 50 of
finally,
them.
my recall.
How long did it take to?
All the evening, and by the mid of the night, I had a rocking Linux system on my PC, and it was just wow, awesome.
You deserved it. Like.
Yeah.
So what was the distribution that you picked up?
It was a Slackware. At the time, it was one of the most famous Linux distribution around, and it was quite rough, but you could at this time you could have a graphical interface if you did some tricks with the video card, and but it was possible to run a graphical environment.
Okay, and were you already a programmer at the time?
Yes, I was finishing my studies, so I could program in C, C++, and a bit of Lisp, Common Lisp.
Okay. And so how did you go from being a Linux user to like actually creating a distribution? What was the spark that made you want to do that?
I think I was very I loved the Unix and Linux operating system because it was more robust, more stable, etc. And at the same time, I was very attracted by graphical interfaces. I remember I discovered Next Step at the moment, and I was very impressed with the graphical interface. And I wonder if we could have something similar with Linux at the core, and a great graphical interface that would run by default, actually, and not because at the time when you started Linux, you had a command line by default, and if you did some things, you could have a graphical interface. But I thought at the moment that everything was moving towards the graphical interface, and I thought there was an opportunity to bring something in that spirit that would be graphical by default. And well, that was the beginning of the story. And well, basically, I just started by forking Red Hat distribution, and I put KDE, which was new graphical interface, on the top of this, and I did everything that was needed to have this starting in a graphical mode when you started the system. And it can sound easy, but actually it was not very easy to do.
It doesn't sound easy. Don't worry. It sounds very scary. And so, how did you? At what moment did you think, okay, this can be a real thing? Let's start a company. Let's make it into a whole project.
Well, I really was engaged in this thing. I remember every evening I spent all my time on this, and until late in the night, and it was so difficult to wake up, and I had the feeling that there was something, actually, because so then when I had something integrated and usable and packaged, because one of the key I think thing for this kind of project is to have something that people can easily install and have running without too much hassle. And when I had all this ready, I started to wonder how I could distribute this, and it was not easy because at home I had my small modem. It was a 14 kilobits per second modem, and it was very slow, and I had to find some FTP servers to host this, and it was very difficult. Actually, I contacted a few universities, and I only had two of them who accepted to host the whole distribution. So this started like this, and there was not much buzz at the beginning for a few weeks actually, and eventually I posted a news on a website, an American website, which is called Slashdot. Probably it's you know this.
Did you get the Slashdot effect?
Yes, yes, but I didn't realize because the website of for this distribution was hosted by a friend, so he got the Slashdot effect.
Always post to your friends. That's
Yeah.
the number one rule. Yeah.
And it was very interesting because I remember I posted the news and I saw it was published, and I saw the first comments, and it was mostly positive actually. And then I had to go to the south of France for a vacation, for 2 weeks vacation, without a computer, without internet access, and I didn't know what happened during this time. And when I was back, well, actually I had something who called me during. You know that there are many people who are asking for a new version or new things, and I didn't have any access to internet, so I had to wait. And when I came back, when I was back home, I had between 300 and 400 email messages waiting for me. And there was even 2 companies, one American and one Australian, who told me they had started to make some CDs with the distribution, and they started to sell it, and it was selling well. So,
okay. So but then you had a good intuition that you were onto something.
yeah, it was a great confirmation of yes, of the market actually. So and then immediately I got also some people who told me why not creating a company for this, etc. So it was quite fast. So I took my time. I talked to all the people, and at the same time, I continued to work on the distribution to improve it, and to work on the website. And I started also to sell some CDs with someone I knew, and we created the Mandrake soft at the time, which became Mandriva by the end of 1998. So a few months later, after the initial release.
So Mandrake and then Mandriva got to be very popular. At one point, you had close to 1/4 of the market share in Linux desktops. You had millions of users. Can you tell a few stories about the ride, to the top?
It was very fast. I remember that. On early 99, we were about 3 to 4 people working full-time on this, and 1 year later, a little bit more, we were 150 people. And it was quite strange for me because at the time I still lived in Normandy, so it's 2 hours from Paris. And the headquarters of Mandrake Soft were in this street, actually.
With a book here.
Incredible.
Back to the beginning.
Yeah. And I was coming about once every week and to see the new people. And each time I met many new people. So it was very exciting. And we had also many people who were telecommuting from everywhere in the world.
What do you think made Mandrake successful? Was it the focus on user simplicity, the graphical interface, the features? What do you think was the success factor of the distribution?
I think it's because of we probably have been the first Linux distribution to ship with a graphical interface by default. quickly there was SUSE who did the same thing, but at the time, most Linux distributions were still very command line interface based. So I think we fit a new need, and very quickly also we had some new tools like a graphical interface for the installer, and at the time nobody did that. And we had also some tools to configure the OS, like all the settings and etc. And it was quite new, and all the others, Red Hat and SUSE, and they all started to do the same actually. So it was very exciting to see that we had.
You were being copied.
Yeah, sure. Even if we probably have had less means, money than the competitors, in particular Red Hat, but it was quite exciting time. Yeah.
Okay. So those were the good years, and afterwards, so there were some worse years. Well, can you tell us what happened quickly?
Yeah. It was, I think, one of the things we didn't realize is that we felt like being at the top of a wave, and a rising wave, and we opened some offices in the US. We had some resellers everywhere in the US, in the bookstores, and the revenues started to grow a lot. But at the same time, of course, when you have to pay 150 people every month, if your revenues are not at the same level of your expenses, you have to find money all the time with investors and VCs, etc. And this worked until a certain point, and by the end of 2000, there was the internet bubble explosion, and starting from here, all the startups couldn't or could very hardly find some fresh money to finance their development. So in only a few months, actually, it's been very complicated to fuel the project with money and to continue to grow.
Were you hoping that Linux would start to gain significant market share on the desktop? I mean, like, was that one condition to the success of the company, or were you already looking more on the server side?
Yeah, we soon developed server software with a similar spirit. Actually, we wanted to have some server software that would be easier to use, more easy to use than the others, the competitors, and it was there was a good traction for this actually, but really it was a matter of money, and because we were on a very good growth, and but suddenly we had to stop investing, and eventually we had to reduce the number of people who were working for the company, and it was quite hard time. So we succeeded to find some extra money in 2001. We went public. Actually, we did an IPO, which is not easy, but we did it. But 2 years later, it was still problematic, and we had to cut a large number of employees at the company.
So yourself, you quit the company in 2006?
Yes. In the meantime, things went better, and in 2005, we were break even, and we launched new products like Mandrake Move, which was a funny product. It was a Linux distribution that was on a USB stick, and you just had to plug the USB stick on a PC, and you had your full working system, and you could record your data on the same stick. So it was quite a new product, and we sold many of these. So it was going better, but yes, for many reasons, I had to quit the company in 2006, and then I started a new project.
So yeah, you just had like you had spent 8 years of your life like working on that project. Were you like burned out at that point? Were you eager to start something new? What were your state of mind at the time?
This was not a burnout because the most difficult years in terms of work and engagement were at the beginning, when you spend all your weekends to work. But at this time, it was not the case anymore. Actually, there was some conflicts, internal conflicts, that led to my departure, and also the other founders. But I must say that it was an opportunity for me also to make something new and to start to try new ideas of products. So,
all right. So the next thing you did was Ulteo. It was a startup doing virtual desktop. So how did you come up with that idea?
Yes, Ulteo. It was there were two Ulteos actually. There was the beginning, and then we had to pivot. But at the beginning, the idea was that networks connectivity was faster and faster, and I think that at the moment I had the idea to maybe have all the applications and the data in the cloud instead of in your PC, or maybe both in the cloud and on your PC with a synchronization mechanism. And I started with this idea. So we created a new Linux distribution forked from Ubuntu, actually, not Mandrake. And
it's like Mandrake from Mozilla, who starts a browser based on Chrome. Yeah. It's the same
you take the best thing.
Okay.
And I developed some online services, and one of the most interesting feature of this was that you could run your desktop environment within a web browser. It was using a Java applet with a VNC client actually, but it was quite funny because you could find the same applications, exactly the same, within the web browser than as what you were using on your own PC. So
right. 10 years later, we can play games in real time with quite the same technology, right?
Yeah, because networks are very fast, and so it was very technically it was super exciting because we really developed many new pieces of software from scratch. And however, when we went to see some investors and some VCs to find some money, they were really shy, and they didn't. Well, they told us this is a huge project. It is very ambitious, and it will cost a lot of money, and we couldn't follow you on this. So maybe what you should do is to make this for corporates. You put the best components of what you are developing into something that corporates would like to use, and actually we realized that it was the idea was like Citrix.
So you did the traditional pivot from B2C to B2B.
Yeah. Traditional, and so we did that.
Did it work?
Yes, it worked. The issue is that we started to work on a new R&D, and it took 2 additional years. So it was a little bit tricky because when you don't earn, you don't have any revenue for several years, it's complicated. But yes, we started to sell the software, and it was well accepted. But in the end, we had to stop because it was a little bit too complicated. with the money, so it was sold to another company.
Okay. So we are in 2017 by that point. You've done one is distribution, one startup. You also did a startup accelerator, which we might talk about later. But little that, and then you think, okay, let's start a mobile OS. What happened?
Yes. It's funny because it's very there are some similarities with the Mandrake Linux story. It's a kind of not reaction, but I wanted to have something better for me first, and maybe for the others. And it was in 2017, and I started to wonder why I was using Google more and more, and why I was using an iPhone, and why I was using a MacBook with macOS and no more Linux at the time. And
which is a lot of the state of Linux on the desktop.
So I wonder why, on a personal point of view, and I also realized that there were some questions about users' data privacy and how our data are catched by the net giants that we all know, and the reason why. And I started to ask myself, is it possible to have an alternative? Because when I looked for alternatives, I didn't find anything actually. And this market, the mobile OS market, is dominated by two actors, Google with Android, which is on 80% of the device in the world, and 20 remaining is Apple with iOS. And you have a few projects which are mostly ultra secured, Android forks and so on, but not very usable for me and mom and dad. So the idea was to create something new that would be more respectful with the user's data, and at the same time that my mom and my dad and my children could use like they can use an iPhone or Android.
So that was the starting point, the starting idea. How did you get from that idea to, okay, let's actually do it? I want to be doing that for the next 5, 10 or more years of my life. What made you decide to go all in on that?
I don't know yet how long it will.
Well, it's been 2 years already.
Yes, I had to check that this idea would find some others' interest, and so before putting on all my life into this, like it is now, I started a crowdfunding campaign on Kickstarter, and for two reasons. One, I had to find some money to pay a first developer. And two, I wanted to check if people would be interested by this. And so I started this Kickstarter by the end of 2017. And we had the goal was to find 25,000 euros. And in 5 weeks, we reached 100,000 euros. So 4 times the initial goal. So and at the same time, so we had more money than expected, and better, we had many people who wrote us to say thank you for this project. We were expecting this for a long time. We hope that it will be successful, and so it was a great proof that there was an opportunity and probably a market for this.
So there was actually already a few different freer Android distributions. What was to you like the main differentiating point of E?
Yes, not only Android, because there has been Firefox OS,
right?
and which is well a deep fork of Android, and
Also Ubuntu.
and Ubuntu Touch, and they mostly failed. And I think the reason they failed is the same reason as maybe the Linux desktop failed earlier. It's just about applications. I remember at Mandrake we spent a lot of time telling people, graphists, for example, that they could use maybe GIMP instead of Photoshop, or maybe KD and Live instead of Adobe Premiere, and it just doesn't work actually. Professionals need professional tools. So if you say to the users, okay, here is a new mobile operating system, it's more secure, it's more respectful with your own data, it doesn't send anything to Google, but there are only 5 applications you can use, email client and a web browser, and but you cannot use anything else. There cannot be any adoption for this, at least not for a large number of people, maybe a small number of people. So I wanted to have, at the same time, something that was fully ungoogled, and so we tried to make this really, how to say this, Google free.
Google free. Okay.
Not sending any data to Google, and at the same time we want this to be attractive enough in terms of user experience, so that anybody could use it as an iPhone.
So how do you solve that? Because so you can't have the Play Store, for instance?
Yes, one of so we are trying to do something appealing in terms of user interface, and at the same time we have our own store of application, which is actually a kind of a mirror of free Android applications that we all know, and we try to mix this and put all these pieces together to have something consistent and that you can use immediately. We also have some online services, basic online services, like you have your own email, you have a calendar, you have a drive to store your data online securely. We don't put, obviously, Google search as default search engine. We have a Meter search engine that is using other search engine with a full anonymization. So
you really act as integrators. You take lots of pieces in the open source community and you try to present them together in something that makes sense as a whole.
Basically, that is the idea.
That's also what a Linux distribution does, right?
Yes,
yeah.
Yes. Actually, it's a little bit more complicated because
tell us why.
Because all those pieces are not always made to work together and to talk to themselves. So there are many adjustments to do, and some changes. Actually, we are forking a lot of software and modifying them, and also developing some things that are missing, like simply synchronizer for your data between your mobile data and our cloud, secured cloud. This is the kind of things where we had to start from scratch. And so yes, but that was really the idea at the beginning, was to use as many possible existing software and develop nothing if possible. But
okay. And so you also started selling physical phones?
Yeah. Yes. Yes, because there is something special with mobile operating systems, Android forks. It's that you cannot install this like you plug a CD-ROM and you let the installer do the job.
Is it harder than 50 floppy disks?
Yes, yes. It can be quicker, but it's not very easy. You have to flash a smartphone. It's something complicated, and there is a risk to block the smartphone, to brick the smartphone. So
how many have you bricked so far?
Actually, not any.
Okay.
We were close to this, but for some. So until we have some tools, and we are trying to develop some tools to make this process easier for everyone. But until this, we had nothing for people who don't have the time or who don't have the knowledge or the skills to do this. So, and many people ask us, when do you have a smartphone with your system? I want to purchase one. So we found a solution which is to deal with refurbished smartphones, and we found a partner for Europe, which is Flashing, which is doing the job with the tools we have provided to them, and now we have 2 models of smartphones that people can purchase, and with everything ready to use.
Nice. How many have you sold so far?
We have sold close to 500, and we have started just this summer, so
okay.
It's doing okay.
Congrats.
Yeah, thanks.
You didn't sell any Mandrake PCs at the time, I guess.
No.
So yeah, and what is to you like the main, like the target audience right now for these phones? Like, should we buy one? What are the main limitations right now?
Of course, we are still in beta, so there are remaining bugs. But this is working quite well. I'm using it all the time for several months.
Is it your only phone, or do
Yeah.
you have a backup phone?
No. Well, actually, I have dozens of phones, but many different phones.
Okay, but you can use it as a daily.
I'm using it. Yes.
You'll be able to have a demo later.
So here it is. There is everything on that, and there is even Twitter. You see, and
so you can install the Twitter APK, the application into that. It's just it's regular Android.
We have developed an installer of applications, and there is also WhatsApp. You see.
Okay.
And one thing we are trying to do is that if you take, I will show you an example. Is there some network? Yes.
Maybe
I take a random application, BBC News, and we are adding some privacy score because we want to share this information with users so that they have the choice to use any application they want, of course, but at the same time we want them to know that in many applications there are some trackers, for instance, that are tracking them all the time. So here you can see that in the BBC, I took it randomly, but you will see the same for many apps. You have many trackers, Google DoubleClick, OK App, @Internet, Google Firebase.
So it's kind of a UCA, but for mobile apps, right?
Yeah. So
the score.
And we think that people can really benefit from this. Actually, I wanted to say that this is possible because there is a nice project that is called Exodus Privacy, which has developed the software to analyze all the APKs, so to see all the trackers. So we are using this to show the trackers in any application that you can use.
Nice. So you'll be able to show a demo
yeah.
and to see a demo and maybe order a phone later tonight. So how scared do you think we should be about Google, Apple, and the big ones? Is it a purely theoretical thing? You want to do it because it's a better idea, or do you think there are real threats for us?
if you there is an interesting example in the real life, which is the mail and the phone. Post, like any post organization, they could open each letter they distribute to people before distributing them and see the content and put some contextual ad inside the envelope and then redistribute. That would be very beneficial for everyone, right? And phone carriers, they could listen to your calls, and at the end of the conversation, they would.
Don't give bad ideas to people. They're going to do it.
I think they would love to do this because it would be a great business model. And but the laws, we have laws, and the laws prevent this. And I think that if the laws prevent this for mail and phone, at some point you have to wonder why there are no laws to prevent this happening in mobile phones, and it's happening all the time, right. Everywhere, etc. So, and we are all sending all our data to Google, Facebook, and all apps publishers. So, for the main purpose of this, obviously, is for advertising. They want to sell advertising by knowing people better. The problem is that they are tracking us, and they know everything about us and each person, and this is at a large scale because those are global companies. So eventually there can be a risk of there could be a kind of totalitarian system that could happen at the planet scale, and that would be in the hands of private companies. And this could be a kind of soft
control, soft power.
Yes, they could just start to decide for you what is better for your life, etc. So I think we should try to resist to this. And
okay. And so are you thinking about all of that while you're working on the project, or is that something more distant that you?
I think that we really should try to have alternatives to Google and to Facebook and to this kind, because those companies are really too big and have too much control on everything. If you look at Google in particular, in a smartphone operating system, there are some Google stuff at all stages of the product, low level. When you run an Android device, there is, for instance, a connectivity check, and right. This is pinging some Google servers already.
So are you actually confident there's no hidden firmware in some chip that's actually doing nasty stuff, or is it 100% open?
That's a question. That's a question. I think we cannot answer this very easily because when you go into the hardware, most of the time it's not open source, and but you can audit this. So
have you done physical tests to see if the phone is actually communicating, or what?
We have not done this for the hardware, but we are doing this for the software, and we are tracking what is transiting on the network, and sometimes we discover that some services are pinging Google servers, and then we have to remove this in the code.
Okay. And so what's the current state of the project? Do you have volunteers? What's the kind of financial model that allows you to work on it?
So we have many volunteers. There are thousands of people actually who are following us and very interested in the project. there are hundreds of people who are discussing it every day on various forums. And we have.
Did you post it to Slashdot again?
And there was a post on on Slashdot. Yeah.
Today it's more Hacker News, I guess, the equivalent.
The problem is that now Slashdot is, I think, is not followed by as many people as it used to be. But there are other sides.
Okay. But so, what do the volunteers work on? Like, do they work on apps? Do they work on the core system? What do they do?
They contribute by testing, by reporting bugs, by sending patches. We are doing everything open source, so all the source code is available online. And we have also some volunteers who are contributing some contents, who are doing some translations. If you look at the website, which is e.foundation, you can see that there are several languages available already, and this is the result of volunteer work. So thanks to them, by the way.
Are you feeling the same level of excitement that you felt, back in the day with Mandrake?
It's far much more exciting, actually.
Right? For you, or like, do you feel that in the community as well?
I feel some excitement, truly. It's more exciting for one reason. It's that when back to the Linux story, I had soon the feeling that it would probably stay for a limited kind of people, hackers and people who. But it would hardly
cross over to the mainstream public. And with E, you feel that it could go far wider?
Yes, and you asked me who were using this, and it's quite funny because and scary in some.
Is your grandmother using almost?
Not yet, but we have many people who. This is the kind of people who are very concerned by, ethical subjects, and they are concerned by the climate change, and they want to eat, bio vegan stuff. Okay. And when they learn about what we are doing, and when they learn about all the problems with the data privacy, immediately they start to they ask questions, and they are very interested by what we are doing. So,
but those are the early adopters.
Yes, those are early adopters, but they are not into tech. So this is the challenge.
It's a different kind of community of early adopters. Okay, and what do you think will make you cross over to the general public, and people will start offering that at Christmas, and really to people who are not aware about those values and that don't care about their privacy?
I think there are two aspects, maybe three. The one is that we have to polish the product, we have to make it better. Most of the components, the features work well, but there are always, the 1% gap, which is hard to complete, and so there is still a lot of work to do to make it very, at the same level of what we can see on an iPhone or most of the Android operating system. But so this is the first point. The second point, I think, is that we need more
evangelism,
for those topics. People have to know that when they have this in their pocket, they are tracked all the time, geographically speaking, and there are companies and corporates who know everything about their life. And I think this, it's like when maybe 15 years ago or 20 years ago, when people started to hear about vegan and natural food, and there was not an immediate benefit to eat this kind of food, but more and more you understand things, and you realize that yes, it's probably better to eat some natural food than industrial food. So
you think you are early, but people will come to realize that.
Probably, yeah.
Okay, let's wish that for all of our sakes. So one more question. We are going to start the Q&A right after that.
Maybe I can just add something on this topic.
Please do.
I think we are talking here about individuals, personal users like you and me, but there are also big concerns in corporates because.
Are you anticipating the pivot to B2B already?
No. Because I think we can do both ways. It's clear that now in corporates, people start to understand that they cannot put their data anywhere, and there are some secrets in corporates, and we have lots of demands of corporates who are interested in what we are doing and would like to have this for people who work every day for professional matters.
Maybe people who compete with Google first.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Gaël.
Thanks to you.
Can give a big round of applause for him.